Good morning and welcome to our lesson today. So in our previous lesson we talked about composition writing as speech, but in our lesson today we are going to talk about verb tenses. So verb tenses is a topic under verbs. But before we do verb tenses, we are going to very fast go through the verbs. And then, what is a verb? Everyone knows a verb is a doing word. Some verbs show action while others show the state or condition of something. So verbs can show the state or condition of something, or verbs are simply actions. For example, I can say she is dancing. She is dancing. So example, we can have dancing. Let's say we can have playing already written. We can have singing. And then we can have what? We can have clapping. These are actions. And then some verbs show the state in which, the state of something, the state or condition of something. For example, we can say she is sick. She is sick. So is here is acting as a verb, and it shows the state of being what? The state of that person, or the she in the sentence being sick. Or we can say I am a girl. I am a girl. So girl, is the verb, and it's showing the state of me being a girl, or being female. So verbs can show actions, or verbs can show the state or condition of something. So the state is someone is a girl, someone is sick. The state of being sick, or the state of being what? Being a girl. Now, verbs are divided into two groups. Number one, we have what we call regular verbs, and then we have what we call what? Irregular verbs. So we are going to begin with regular verbs. What is a regular verb? A regular verb forms its past tense or its past participle by adding an ed or a d. For example, you can add a d or an ed, or you can add a d to these tenses. Now, present tense you have refused, past tense you have refused, and then past participle you also have refused. So you have the present tense, you have the past tense, then you have the past participle. So I formed my past tense by simply adding an ed, by simply adding a d on my what? Simply adding a d on my verb. So we can form some past tenses or past participles of regular verbs, or we can say regular verbs are those verbs that end with a d or an ed in their past tenses or past participles. Example: how do you form these past tenses or past participles? In some verbs we add a d, and in some other verbs we add an ed. So for example, we have a refuse, we have refuse, and then you have for example, I have refused, and then refused. I have an ed, then I have a d. You have waste. Example, we can have waste. It ends with a d, so I simply add a d. On my what? on the verb. So I have waste, and then past tense becomes wasted, and then past participle becomes also wasted. But I have scream. If I want to make the past tense of scream, I'm going to say screamed. I'm adding an ed, and then I'm going to add screamed also, which adds an ed. So if you see a verb ending with a d in its past tense or past participle, then we call it a regular verb. How do you form these regular verbs? So this one is ending with an e or an ed. But if you find a verb that ends with a y, and you want to change it into present tense into the past tense and past participle, you omit a y. You are going to omit a y, and then you add an ed on your word. For example, I have study, present tense. In my past tense, I'm going to say studied. You omit a y, you replace it with an I, and then you add an ed. So study, studied, study. That is the past tense. You can have occupy, then you have occupied. You omit a y, you replace it with an I, and then occupy, occupied, occupy. For example, we can say defy. You have defy. I said you omit a y, you replace it with an a, you replace it with an I. So you are going to say defy, defied, and then defied. So these ones end with a d or an ed, and then we call them what? Regular verbs. So some regular verbs you simply can add a d or an ed, and then you form its past tense. We gave an example, scream. I gave an example of refuse. But in some regular verbs, especially those that end with a y, you omit the y, then you replace the y with an I, and then you add an ed to form its past tense. But some regular verbs form their past tense and past participle by forming a double consonant. If I say by forming a double consonant, this is what I mean. For example, you have a word. Let's say this is the verb, then this is the past tense, and then this is the past participle. So let's, for example, I have the word drop. My past tense is going to be drop. My past tense is going to be dropped. And then my past participle is also dropped. It is ending with an ed or an ed. But see what we did. We have a double consonant. What I mean a double consonant is double that voice. Drop. For example, we have drop. So you double the P, that's what we call a double consonant, and then you add an ed to form its past tense and past participle. You also can have plan. For example, you have plan. So the past tense is double consonant. You have planned, and then you have planned, which is the past participle. So that's to do with regular verbs, and then we can also have irregular verbs. The difference is simple. Regular verbs are those verbs that form their past tense and past participle by adding a d or an ed. But when you come to the irregular verbs, these verbs do not have an ed or a d in their past tense or in their past participle. Irregular verbs change in different forms. There are different types of irregular verbs. Example 1, we have those irregular verbs that change from an I to an A to IU. Like the present tense have sing, the present tense have I, the past tense have an A, and the past participle have IU. Example is number 1. We can say sing, past tense becomes sang, then past participle becomes sang of IU. So I have the present tense, the past tense, and then the past participle. So I have the past participle, we have the past tense, and then you have the present tense. So I'm having sing, those irregular verbs that change from an I to an A to IU. So you have sing, then past tense becomes sang, past participle becomes sang, past participle becomes sang. You can have begin. For example, my verb is begin, past tense is began with an A, and then past participle is began with IU. So you can also have ring. For example, ring. We can have rang of an A, and then rang of IU. And then you can have swim, begin, present tense, past tense becomes swam with an A, then past participle becomes swam with what? With IU. So those irregular verbs that change from an I to an A to IU. How do you use these words how do you use these irregular verbs in a sentence? The secret is one. If you want to use the past participle, you make sure you have a helping verb. Okay, for example, we can have another example is you can have shrink, and then it becomes shrank of an A, and then shrank of IU in their past participle. Now you find in most cases pupils do not know how to use an A, the past tense from the past participle. So example in a sentence we are going to say, let's say for example, in a sentence we can say, the bell, for example, the bell, for the bell dash when I arrive. So in brackets you have ring, in brackets you have what? Ring. The question is maybe give the correct form of the verb in the brackets. Correct form of the verb in bracket. Correct form of the verb in the bracket. in the bracket. Then they say the bell dash when I arrived. They want you to give the correct form of the verb. You go for R, let's say you're going for an A. The bell rang when I arrived. But look at the second question. The bell had dash when I arrived. The bell had dash when I arrived. Still the word in bracket is ring. Now, you give the correct form of the verb, the bell had. You are going to go for the bell had rang of IU when I arrived. Why are you going for R of an IU? Any moment you want to use the past participle of a word, especially these ones that change, especially irregular verbs, because irregular verbs are difficult. It's not like having regular verbs. You simply know when you have a regular verb, you are going to add an ed or ad. But when it comes to irregular verbs, especially these ones that change from an I to an A to a U, then you are bound to know that it is difficult if it comes in a sentence, or if you are not conversant with them, how to use them in a sentence, especially if they want the past tense or the past participle. So you have the bell rang when I arrived. I have ring. Why did I use rang? If my sentence does not have a helping verb, then I do not what? Then I do not use the past participle. The bell had, this is the past perfect tense. Well, how do you form the past perfect tense? It forms by had plus a past participle. So you have the bell had rang when I arrived. Any moment you see a helping verb, you go for the what? For the you or the past participle. Other in a sentence you can say the exam. The exam dash before 1 o'clock. Let's say before 1 o'clock. So you have that. And then in brackets they have given you begin. So you say the exam dash before 1 o'clock. So you come here the exam, then you go for begin. The exam began with an A before 1 o'clock. But if you say the exam, for example, the exam was dash before 1 o'clock. So the word in bracket is still begin. What are you going to go for? You say the exam was began. The exam was began with a you. Why? Because you have a helping verb. In moment you see a helping verb before the dash, make sure you go in for the past participle. Especially if it comes to verbs that change, irregular verbs that change from an I to an A, then to IU to IU. Hope I'm clear. So that is one example of irregular verbs. Now, we also have those irregular verbs. That change from an I to IU. In their past tense, we are still on irregular verbs. We also have those ones that change from an I to IU. IU in the past tense and IU in the past participle. And I know the question will be, how do I use this in a sentence? You will see the difference when they have this in a sentence. For example, number one, you can have spin. Past tense is span. Then past participle is also span. From an I to a U, then to a IU. Like it doesn't change. You have hang. No, you have, let's say, swing. You have swing. Past tense becomes swung. And then past participle also becomes swung. Past participle becomes swung. For example, you have ring. You know this, the act of removing water from, let's say, from a cloth. The past tense becomes rang. Then the past participle also becomes rang. Like it is changing from an I to a U and then to a IU. How are you going to use this in a sentence? Spin, swing, and ring is the present tense. What is the present tense? We talk about actions that are happening at the time we are speaking. Like you can say the teacher talk. The teacher talk becomes the present tense. So when it comes here, you are going to give swung, either swung or rang or span if they're asking for either the past tense or the past participle. What do I mean? It is applicable if they have a helping verb or they do not have a helping verb. For example, my mother, example I have in a sentence, you can say my mother dashed the clothes. My mother dashed the clothes. My mother dashed the clothes. Yes, for example, they say yesterday. And in brackets, they have given you ring. So you can go say my mother rang the clothes yesterday, because it is the past tense. Past tense is simply the yesterday of a verb. But you can also say my mother. I can also say my mother had rang the clothes. My mother had rang the clothes. I'm still having IU. What does that mean? Because these verbs change from an I to IU in the present, in their past tense, and in their past participle. Because they're miscellaneous. You can change from the past tense with IU, then the past participle with IU. Which means if there is a helping verb, rang is applicable. And even without a helping verb, rang is applicable. Especially if they are talking about the past tense, So rang is applicable if they are talking about the past tense, or if they are talking about the past participle. Now, some verbs do not change. Some irregular verbs do not also change. They remain the same, whether in the present tense, whether in the past tense, or whether in the past participle. And I come across this most of the time when we are marking conversations. Most learners think that verbs must end with an ed or ad, especially in their past tense or past participle. So you are making a conversion and then somebody says, I heard a loud bang. When you have here present tense, past tense is heard, and then past participle is heard. We call them miscellaneous irregular verbs. Now look at this. You are going to talk of those irregular verbs that do not change from their past tense, from their present tense to their past tense, and then to their past participle. So the common one we have, let's say the present tense, we have the past tense, then we have the past participle. These are irregular verbs that do not change. So example, I have number one, an irregular verb that does not change, and most people make mistake when it comes to this. It is cut, past tense is cut, past participle is cut. You have put present tense, put past tense, put past participle. You will see some people or some learners saying instead of cut, yesterday my mother cutted some onions. That becomes wrong. Cut is an irregular verb. It does not change from its past tense and then to its past participle. So if you find like irregular verbs and then they do not change from their past tense, from their present tense to their past participle, and then to their what? And then to their past tense. Example, you can have cast. Past tense is cast. Past participle is what? Past participle is also cast. You hurt your leg yesterday. Today, yesterday you hurt your leg. The past participle is also you hurt your leg. You do not hurt, then past tense hurted, then past participle hurted. It is simply hurt, and then you also hurt, and then you hurt. Now you say, I let you, you let me down today. Yesterday you let me down. The previous day you let me down. You don't say let today down. Yesterday you letted me down. Or the previous day you letted me down. It is simply let, and then let. It doesn't matter the tense. It is the present tense, the past tense, or the past participle. Cut. Put. Cast. Hurt. Especially if it comes to this. Most learners are going to say hearted. No, you hurt your leg today. Yesterday you hurt your leg. The previous day you also hurt your leg. Saying they are irregular verbs that do not change. And what are irregular verbs? These are verbs that do not take an ed or ad in their past tense. Okay, we can have another one is broadcast. Let's say, for example, today you broadcast. Yesterday you broadcast. The previous day you also broadcast. So while changing these verbs from their past tense to their past participle, or if you are given a sentence, irregular verbs that do not change, you have that. Okay, so if you are given this word, especially if they give you a verb, depending on the sentence, you simply check, does my sentence have a helping verb? If the sentence have a helping verb before the dash, just know that the answer you should give there should be a past participle, and not a past tense. Okay, but if the sentence does not have a helping verb, then you're gonna go in for the first past tense. But first you analyze the sentence. Do they want the past tense or do they want the past participle? And then when it comes to most of the exams, they are going to test you on tenses that no, they do not change. The verbs that they do not change, either from the past tense, from the present tense to the past tense, or to the past participle. Some verbs, like let's say an irregular verb like here, and then the past tense is had. We call it a miscellaneous verb. Here, had, and then had. You see some people say, yesterday I heard a voice. No, you hear today, yesterday you heard, and the previous day you heard. The past tense is similar to that one of the past participle. The rule is simple. You want to go in for the past participle, make sure there is a helping verb. So I'm going to leave the exercise. All of you attempt the questions, and then you send them to my number. Then we do correction. Have a good day.